They thought I was invisible. That's the funny part. Not poor, exactly. Not loud enough to matter, just the kind of person people talk over and step around. And, for years, I let them. Until, one morning, standing in a borrowed suit in a glass office overlooking downtown Seattle, someone finally asked me a question that cracked everything open. "If your family is so wealthy," she said, half smiling, "why were you living out of a shelter last winter?" Let me back up, because nothing about my life makes sense if you don't know where it started. My name is Lena Brooks, and for most of my childhood I was told I should be grateful. Grateful for a roof, grateful for leftovers, grateful for silence. My mother died giving birth to me. My father had passed years earlier, and the only family left was my Aunt Valerie, my dad's sister. She took me in when I was a newborn, hugged me in front of everyone, told the world she was doing the right thing. And I believed her because what choice did I have? Growing up in her house felt like living in someone else's shadow. Valerie had 2 sons, loud, confident, always praised. I was the quiet one, the helper, the kid who cleaned up after dinner and stayed out of the way. She told me school was unnecessary, that homeschooling would protect me from bad influences. In reality, it kept me isolated. No friends, no teachers asking questions, no one noticing that I wore the same clothes year after year. When I asked about college, she laughed and said, "People like us don't get those kinds of dreams." Yeah, that stung. But after a while, you start to believe it. What I didn't know was that my grandfather, Charles Whitmore, a self-made billionaire investor, had been sending money for me every single month since I was born. $10,000 every month. He thought I was living comfortably, preparing for a bright future. Valerie made sure I never knew he existed. She told me my mother's family wanted nothing to do with me, that I was a reminder of a tragedy they'd rather forget. When you hear something enough times as a kid, it settles into your bones. The day I turned 18, Valerie handed me a trash bag with my clothes and a worn envelope containing a single photo of my mother. "You're grown now," she said, not even looking at me. "Figure it out. No documents, no money, no warning. I slept on buses and libraries anywhere warm. Eventually, I found my way to a women's shelter where I washed dishes for meals and studied for my GED during the day. I kept my head down. That was my survival skill. Then, everything changed because of a man named Robert Hale, a private investigator. He showed up at the shelter one afternoon asking for me by name. I thought I was in trouble. Turns out, my grandfather had finally asked someone to check on me. When Charles saw the photos Robert brought back me and donated clothes, scrubbing pots, sleeping on a cot he didn't call ahead. He got in his car and drove straight to the shelter. When I first saw him, I assumed he was another donor doing a feel-good visit. Tall, silver-haired, expensive coat. He looked out of place. Then he said my name like it mattered, like it carried weight. "Lena," he said, voice shaking. "I'm your grandfather." I laughed because it sounded ridiculous. That kind of thing doesn't happen to people like me. Then he started apologizing, words tumbling over each other, and something in his eyes told me he was telling the truth. We sat in a quiet room while he showed me bank statements. Years of transfers. Millions of dollars. All in my name. All controlled by Valerie. I felt sick. Angry. Numb. "So, where is it?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "That's what we're going to find out." Going to his penthouse felt like stepping onto another planet. Everything was clean, bright, quiet. I didn't know where to stand, what to touch. I slept on the edge of the bed that first night fully dressed because part of me was waiting to be told to leave. Charles didn't push. He just stayed nearby like he was afraid I'd disappear again. The investigation moved fast. The money had paid for Valerie's house, her cars, private schools for her sons, vacations overseas. While I'd been counting quarters, she'd been living like royalty. When Charles confronted her, I went with him. I needed to hear it. She tried to cry, tried to justify it, said she'd provided for me. I looked her straight in the eye and told her the truth. "You didn't raise me," I said. "You hid me." The room went quiet. She was arrested that day. Fraud, embezzlement, child neglect. Watching her led away in handcuffs didn't feel like victory, not exactly. It felt heavy, complicated, but it was necessary. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. She was sentenced, her assets seized, the money placed into a protected trust in my name. That's when people started treating me differently. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. I was the girl who inherited millions, the victim who got justice. Strangers had opinions about what I deserved, about what I should forgive. Some even said I was lucky. Lucky, you know what I mean? As if money erases years of being told you don't matter. I enrolled in college studying social policy. I wanted to understand the systems that let someone like me fall through the cracks. Charles and I are still learning how to be family. Some days it's awkward, some days it's healing. He tells me stories about my mother, and I tell him about the nights I spent watching the sun rise from a bus stop. We meet in the middle. Here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. Valerie didn't think she was the villain. She thought she was entitled. She thought control was care, that silence was enough. And there are a lot of people like her hiding behind good intentions while doing real harm. So I want to ask you something. Where do we draw the line between responsibility and neglect, between trust and accountability? If you'd been my grandfather, would you have checked sooner? If you'd been me, would you have spoken up or stayed quiet to survive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with each other if you need to, because these conversations matter. And if you've ever felt invisible, like your story didn't count, let this be your reminder. Being underestimated doesn't mean you're powerless. Sometimes it just means your moment hasn't arrived yet.